In this video, we are going to discuss 5 critical chess traps in Petrov opening. It is an opening that have been played even in the World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen and Ian Nepomniachtchi. It is a very strong, solid opening played from the black side. I'm going to discuss 5 critical chess traps played from both the colors, so it's going to be extremely fun, so let's quickly jump into the video. So, coming to the number 1, we are playing with the white pieces and we start the game with 1e4. Opponent plays e5, knight to f3, knight to f6. This particular opening is known as the Petrov opening. We capture the pawn and black plays the move d6. We come back with the knight and here black captures the pawn. Queen e2. Basically simply pinning up this knight with the king. Black plays the move queen e7, which is the only move. You cannot protect the knight because I can simply play the move d3, hit the knight and get a free piece and eventually win the game. So queen e7, which is the main move. We play the move d3, knight goes back, we play the move bishop to e3 now. Knight to c6, and now we play the move knight to c3. And just try to pause the video and try to think, what is the most natural move in this position for black? I think many of the players would have came up with the move bishop to g4. And it's a very natural move, you're pinning up the knight, so it should be good. But guys, it's already a bad move. You can simply get a better position via h3. If you capture the knight, I guess you're already having the bishop pair. So positional wise, you're already better because as I say every time that the bishop pair is always stronger. So always must try to keep the bishop pair. So it's already good for white. If the bishop goes back, now it's even good. We are going to play the move g4. Bishop goes back and now comes the move g5. Simply attacking the knight. And if the knight goes to d7, simply knight d5. Simply attacking the queen and the pawn. The queen has to go to d8. And now we can simply play the move knight into c7 check. Also attacking the rook. The queen must capture it and now comes the move bishop to b6. Attacking the queen and it's a check. So black is going to lose the queen on the next move. And it's game over. So this is what happens if black goes for playing the move knight to d7. So now let's try to discuss what happens if black goes for playing the move knight to g8, which already looks extremely bad. You're putting your knight back to the corner. Here, white is simply still going to play the move knight to d5, hitting the queen and the pawn. Black plays queen to d7. And now we can simply play the move bishop to b6, check. Such a strong move. Basically, this tactic is not really going to work again because after bishop b6 check, the queen can come in between. At the last position, the knight was on d7. That's the reason we are going to play the move bishop to b6 check. The king has to move or else we are going to capture the pawn with the knight on the next move and attack the rook and the king. King d8 and now we simply capture the pawn with the bishop or you can even capture the pawn with the knight. It's winning. Bishop takes, king move and now bishop to b6, again a very strong move. The bishop cannot be captured because you lose the queen. So basically after bishop b6, knight e7, you can simply trade off the knight, come back with the bishop. If f6, black trying to open up the position, we can simply play the move h4. Idea is to play bishop h3 and you can already sense how white is getting a winning position. So this is how you must play this particular trap if you're playing with the white pieces. So now let's move on to the second trap. Coming to the second trap, we are playing with the white pieces and we start the game with 1e4. e5, knight f3, knight f6. We capture the pawn, black captures the pawn this time. And now we simply play the move queen e2. If any particular player is not aware of this trap, he's definitely going for capturing the pawn. But after queen e2, he pulls the knight back and now comes the move knight to c6. It's a check and you lose the queen. You don't have really good option. Bishop e7 simply capture the queen and white is already winning the game. So this is what happens if your opponent doesn't know about this particular trap. So it is the trap number 2. So now let's move on to the trap number 3. Coming to the trap number 3, we are playing with the black pieces and our opponent with the white pieces start the game with 1e4. e5, knight f3, knight f6, capturing the pawn, knight to c6. Basically white is a pawn up, but we simply offer him a knight trade. And white is simply a pawn up, so it looks like white is winning the game. d3, protecting the pawn. We play the move bishop to c5, simply developing the bishop. And now what is the idea of black in these types of position here is? As white is not having the knight on g1, black's idea is usually to play the move knight g4, going for the f2 pawn and bringing the queen into the game as well. So after bishop c5, bishop e2, and after h5, white plays the move short castle, which is a very normal move. And now we play the move knight to g4, simply jumping in with the knight. If white captures the knight, simply pawn takes. And now black's idea is already to put the queen to h4 and the game is over. For example, like, what can you even play? There's no example to be true. Simply queen h4 and h2 and it's game over. It's already very deadly to see. So white is going to play the move h3, trying to hit this line. And now we are going to play the move queen to d6, threatening mate in 1. White must capture the knight, but there are two options to capture the knight, with the pawn or with the bishop. If the knight is captured by the bishop, we capture the bishop, and after e5, we're trying to be smart because we cannot capture the pawn, because after rook e1 we lose the queen. So we simply play the move queen g6 and it's winning. After d4, we can simply capture the pawn, simply threatening mate in 1, pawn push, and now simply bishop g4, hitting the queen move, trying to ask for a queen trade, but now simply check, king move, bishop h3 check, and the game is over. You try to capture the pawn, I can simply capture the rook, giving a check, and also capturing the queen and eventually winning the game. So this is what happens if white captures the knight with the bishop. If white captures the knight with the pawn, we simply capture with the pawn, again threatening mate in 1, and white can play the move g3, but after queen into g3, the pawn is pinned up and it's game over for white. So this is what happens if white goes for capturing the knight. And now if white goes for playing the move g3, still queen into g3, as the pawn is pinned, you must be aware of this particular thing. And after king h here, queen h2 is mate. So this is what happens if white goes for playing the move g3 in the position. So yeah, that's it for this particular trap number 3. This is how you can simply win this particular game by playing the Stafford Gambit. It is a part of Stafford Gambit. So yeah, this was the trap number 3. So now let's move on to the trap number 4. Coming on to the trap number 4, we have on the board, we are playing with the white pieces and we start the game with 1 e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop c4, allowing black to capture the pawn. Now playing the move knight to c3, takes 6. It is basically a Stafford Gambit, but with a reverse color. After d into c3, I've taken 3 moves into the consideration, which is knight c6, g6, and f6. If knight to c6, simply defending the pawn, knight to g5, and the game is over. You won't believe it because you can't really defend the f7 pawn. White is simply going to capture the f7 pawn with the knight on the next move and going to get a winning position. This is what happens if black plays the move knight c6. If black plays the move d6, we can simply capture the pawn with the knight. If you try to capture the knight, bishop into f7, check. You cannot capture the bishop because the queen is hanging. You must play the move king e7, but after bishop g5 check, you are forced to capture the bishop and I can simply capture the queen and eventually win the game. So this is what happens if black goes for playing the move d6. And any of you thinking that after queen e7 you somehow pin the knight, but guys, after bishop into f7 check, king move, short castle, the game is already winning for white, because you cannot capture with the pawn because the pawn is pinned up, and if you try to capture with the queen, rook e1, the queen move, and now rook check, rook queen check, and eventually it's a mate after a couple of moves like this. So this is what happens if black goes for playing the move d6. So now finally coming to the point, what happens if black goes for playing the move f6? Now many times this position comes like knight into pawn, you cannot capture because after queen check something happens, but it's not really going to work because after g6, queen takes pawn, queen e7, and you can't really capture the rook because the queen is pinned up. This is exactly what happens and this trap is not going to work. So after f6, we are going to play the move knight to h4. The idea is to play the move queen to h5 check. For example, after a6, we can simply play queen h5 check, and after g6, we can sacrifice the pawn. We can sacrifice the knight, and after pawn takes, simply capture the rook or even the pawn. It's completely winning. So this is what happens if black plays the move like a6. If black plays the best move, which is g6, f4, opening up the position. If pawn takes, short castle. And you can already sense how our both pieces are already in harmony and the position is completely winning up. You can simply capture the pawn, simply checkmate the king, and it's over. It's practically over. So if black plays the move queen e7, which is the best move, we push the pawn, not allowing to open up the position. We want to get rid of the g6 pawn because we want to play the move queen to h5 check. So if g5, queen h5 check, and the position is already over. You cannot capture the knight because the rook is hanging and it's still double attack. So this is what exactly happens. If queen g7, the best move, simply pawn takes queen g4, attacking the pawn 2 times, g5, knight f5, simply bishop d3. The queen goes back because already the threat was knight to d6, check and capture the queen. So the queen must go move, and now after knight e3, the possession is already winning for white. Bishop e7, protecting the pawn, but now after knight to d5, double attack, the game is over. So this is how it's already too hard for black to continue the game. My basic point of showing you this trap is this particular motive. So this is how you must play this particular trap. If your opponent plays the move f6, so we have covered everything. So this was the trap number 4. So now let's move on to the final trap of the day, which is the trap number 5. Coming to the final trap of the day, the 5th trap, we are playing with the white pieces and we start the game with 1 e4. e5, knight f3, knight to f6, simply capturing the pawn. Black plays g6, knight f3, capturing the pawn with the knight, knight to c3. And here, if, for example, black plays bishop f5, if black captures the knight, pawn takes, and the possession is already good to be true, white's common setup is to play the move bishop e3, queen e2, make a long castle, bishop d3, and try to expand on the king side, simply going for the checkmate if black shot castle, which is the usual idea. But if black knows this and black plays the move bishop f5, saying that I'm not going to capture the knight, I'm going to allow you to capture. Here, many of the players would like to capture the knight and play the move queen e2, thinking that we have won a piece. But after queen e7, you are not winning a piece eventually. So the best move here is you must play the move queen e2 in this position because your idea is to capture the knight. So if queen e7 in this position, knight to d5, attacking the knight and the pawn. The queen must protect the pawn. The queen move. Now d3 is the best move, simply attacking the knight, and black can't really defend the knight. You are losing the piece and you can simply win this game with the white pieces. The game is over. So this was the 5th trap. You must remember these were the 5 critical traps that you must know if you really want to win in Petrov opening. So yeah, if you learned anything new, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel. I'm going to come up with these exciting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Oneshot Chess.